So if people are looking for that biblical perfection, or that biblical, I really should say perfection, prophecy to be fulfilled, it started. And so many other things that happen that we don't seem to really understand. Sorry about that. Yes, go on, please.
Because biblically speaking, for those of us that are familiar with the reasons that are spoken of in the Bible, the crisis that we see in Syria, and also the crisis that we've seen unfold in Cairo, Egypt, things of that nature, and the ongoing conflict that's taking place in Iraq, Baghdad, and other places. It's speaking, for those of us that are astute, it's basically speaking about biblical stories, biblical prophecies, and, this whole thing with Syria and Damascus and all of this other stuff. Like, it's really beginning to play out like the stories that you read in the quote-unquote good book. So I know that the mainstream media has done a wonderful job of censoring a lot of the information coming out of the Syrian conflict. And a lot of people outside of the censoring, a lot of people are just not familiar with the whole conflict in general. They don't even know what's going on. They just know that people are dying and bombs, people are being victimized, and there's a struggle for power that's taking place in Syria, but a lot of people don't know, the actual root of the conflict, who's involved in the conflict, what hand does America play, where does Israel come in. So can you briefly, from the knowledge that you have about this conflict, can you just briefly give the family kind of a heads up as to what's going on over there?
Well, let me say, I like to get to the nit and the grit of stuff. The more you play with it, and then the program's over, and they never really find out the prima facie.
Exactly.
To me, once you get to the causes, you can always get to the adjectives that led to that subject and noun, but the subject and noun is what's happening again. As you know, for some time it's been stated that Israel's money backing is the United States. I shouldn't even say that. Let's just say it's the government of the people here. And that the conflicts that were edged on, before this whole thing started there with Israel and all like this, and Israel and Syria and all, there was a conflict between Iraq and Iran. And what's so interesting about that, it was the Israelis who bailed out the Iranians and gave them money, and it was the United States who bailed out, if you remember, Saddam Hussein and Iraq and gave them money. And the money was still financed by the United States, so you had a war going on there. The United States was backing up militarily, and then suddenly there was this invasion and all the rest of the stuff happened. People forget how these things play out. And it's also very interesting, because I want to go back on this feminine portion again. It's been said many times that if the females ran it, things would be much more peaceful. I doubt that. And let me tell you why I say that. The United States has had 4 female secretaries of state. And the one that led to that invasion of Iraq, because of what was done, was April Gillespie. People seem to forget that. I don't forget things. This is my hobby. This is what I do, and this is what I love doing. And I'm saying all that because I'm going to get back up to this Israeli thing, but it didn't just start now. This has led up to all of this stuff. So April Gillespie is Secretary of State, and when Saddam Hussein asked her, could he do something about the Kuwaitis who were cross-drilling into his area, taking his oil, and then reselling it. And, of course, Kuwait is known to have a lot of the richest business people around the planet. And she said, if you want to do it, she said, go ahead and do it. So, in other words, she gave him permission as Secretary of State to go ahead and invade Kuwait, okay? And then once that was done, the hell that broke loose after that. So I'm just saying again, after that, of course, you had Madeleine Albright. After that, you had Condoleezza Rice. And then, of course, Hillary Clinton. All of these are warmongers. And if you notice, again, whatever they've done, it has always been duplicit. So I say all of that to say, at one time, you had Iraq being helped by by Israeli, and yet it was all toward what? Possession, getting the fossil fuel and getting to pay a less price for it, and also having a way to expend monies. And so every time there's a war, the economy goes up because they make weapons of war, and everybody does well, except for those who are dying in those wars. So I say all of that now to back it up to where we are now, again. And so here is the key. Now, I have said this, and I don't know if I have it before me now, but before the show is over, I'll try to give some coordinates. It's been stated that on the 5th of May, to be very correct, some say the 4th, some say the 5th, some say maybe near the 6th. Someplace in there in May, it was stated that the Israelis attacked Syria with nuclear device or devices. Some have said it was multiple planes that shot them, so on and so forth. There is a picture on the internet showing a background of a mountain and a huge mushroom cloud coming up from it, dated back to about that date. What's also been said, and Syria has stated this, and I guess it's in the world press, I don't know if it's made to the eyes and ears of the people here, but that there were over 90, well, let's put it like this, that there were 2 divisions of Syrian troops that were there. And this is also near what was called the atomic installation there, or the nuclear installation. 2 divisions, is the way I understand, even amongst the Syrians, is 45,000 people. That would mean 90,000 troops were there, in addition to whichever civilians were there, and so, which means that there may have been a wipeout of over 90, or we might as well say 100,000 people just 2 months ago, and what have you heard about it on the news? Not a daggone thing. I'll bet you most of the audience there has not heard. Some of our audiences, though, like Redfield and mine too, they're kind of sophisticated. They're used to digging, but I'll bet you not too many of them knew that. That's just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg, because then, of course, you have this skirmishing going on in Korea. You have the same thing that has never really settled up in Vietnam. And you have, of course, now acts of nature that are going on everywhere. So what's happening here, again, is very recently that it was between the, what do they call it, Shiites and the Sunni, they've had a big deal going, and they were saying, again, that Shiite women were open to rape and so on and so forth if they were not Sunni, if you're not the other, then, there was no respect for that. And this gets back to this whole thing about religion. Religion is at the root of most of our problems here. Race, religion, and then, of course, the really balance of the planet. With all of this going on, there is still, my religion's better than your religion. This and that are going on again. You had, of course, Mohammed Morsi Marous again, who was the, Muammar, I think, was the previous one. He was just ousted again, and he's replaced again by Marboy. Well, because the people did not like his religious outlook, and so this is where they began to have a lot of problems between that. In fact, they call it the minority Muslims, not the majority of Muslims. This is, again, religion entering into the fray. So I simply state again, behind most things there's religion, behind most things there's money, and behind most things, again, there's race. Unfortunately, on this planet, we can't seem to get rid of any of those things.
Yes, indeed. That seems to be the case.
It's also very interesting, too, when we take a look at some of these patterns that are happening over in what is called the Mideast. Most of these things are written in not just the Bible, but they're referred to in the Bhagavad Gita. They're referred to in the Popol Vuh, which is another Bible here of the people in ancient South America again. It's referred to sometimes in the Al-Quran. And I simply say this again. The reason why the Bible holds itself together so well is because of the book of Revelations. And, of course, many of the prophecies there, I just do it off the top of my head, flowers will bloom out of season, animals will not bear their young, there will be wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes in diverse places, all these things. Well, here's the whole catch, and I've said this before, to the anger, I wouldn't say anger anymore because people are waking up, but to the discreet discretion at earlier times when I was saying this 30 and 40 years ago, that book of prophecies was not written by St. John the Revelator. It was written by Apollonius of Tyana, a black man while in a meditative trance and very much into a major metaphysician on the island of Patmos. That's why it holds together, because it was written by a black man in a meditative trance. Obviously, a very gifted person could look into the future. So I just simply say again, we have our problems with race, we have our problems with religion, but one thing is for sure. When you have that melanin, I don't care what age it is, when it gets down to a crisis, melanin wins out. When it gets down to having to go and ascend and to get into a higher consciousness, melanin wins out. And the same thing's happening now. As our sun releases more coronal mass ejections and our earth absorbs more of it again, guess what happens? You get darker. The melanated gland, again called the pineal gland, operates faster, so it gives you psychic insight. And if you follow that first mind, which I wish everybody would do that, when we start using the so-called logical reptile brain and this logical insectoid brain and this so-called fundamental brain that's always trying to weigh things instead of following that flow from universal prime creator's mind, that's where we get in trouble. And how many times have you heard people say, snap that finger, if I just followed my first mind? Always follow that inner voice. That voice is there. Now, not if you're high and drunk, of course, because you hear anything. But I'm saying if you're sound and sober, not high and drunk, if you're doing the things that you know should make you into a spiritual path, always follow that first mind. It's when you don't that you get in trouble, I get in trouble, we get in trouble, and we would then stay in trouble because you have people out there that are not tuned to the creative mind, but are always following these snake minds and reptile minds. And you know I go there, so I'll just leave that alone.
Indeed. Before I forget, I do want you, because I did briefly share with the family about the upcoming events that you do have. So I want to touch on that real quick. I want you to be able to let the family know about the specific time and the specific location for your lecture that is coming up.
I think it's so.
Titles, which are very interesting.
I think it's very much for that privilege of doing so because you have a vast audience, and maybe some of them might spill over to help me tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Our teleconference again in our center here tomorrow, and the time, of course, is different from your time. You're an hour ahead of us. Ours is and between 2 and 3:30 is when we're holding our teleconference. For those in the area now, if you happen to be in the Chicago area again, you can come by our center. And, of course, we're having a regular lecture there on not only the topics there, but we have certain documentary films, we serve refreshments, and we have some special new products we have because people are going to have to get some new herbals now, new things, because these old things are just not going to hold up based on what they're doing. And now that they have, what's the name of that place? What is this daggone? I can't even think of that. Blocked it out. This company that now, corporation that now took over the Senate and took over Whole Foods. Monsanto. You see what I mean? That name is getting blocked out now because it's such a despicable company, and take that back. Corporation is just awful again. So I simply state that tomorrow, if they would get to our website, which is www.themetacenter, and you push the number 2.com. In other words, that's www.the THC Meta Center, short for Metaphysical Center. You must push the number 2, and then you'll get that. You'll hear my beautiful, wonderful voice saying you reached the Meta Center, and you can sign up for it there again. What we will be doing tomorrow is going to be something I think everyone will benefit from. We're going to get into some natural ways of ridding your home of many of the insects and pests that these floods and so are bringing, natural ways rather than the chemical ways, which sometimes wind up killing you more than the other people, the other pests or so. Also, how to change your mind from negative thoughts to more helpful ways to hold your mind into a higher thought and so. Even under the worst of situations, there are certain things you can do that can actually begin to help you to think better, especially if you have some of these herbs around, some of these incenses around and things like that. And then also how to rid your body of some basic diseases and even some of these parasites. And I state that if you can do that, then you have a 50-50 chance of getting through some of these things because it's the minds that are all succumbed and over with parasites who are already got these chips and so in them. And, of course, there are ways of trying to neutralize some of these chips and hopefully even that, being able to avoid the implantation of some of these chips. So we're going to cover all of that. And, of course, if you're in the general area, it's just a matter of going to our phone number. We'll tell you how to get here. And if you have a GPS, it's very easy to do. It's 60453 is the zip. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. We'll start our teleconference at 2. We'll end it roughly around 2:30. And let me say this, too. I know your audience won't do this, but the audience I usually carry, they'll wait to the last minute, even though it sounds good. Well, I just fretting about it, so I'll wait to the last minute and I'll go in. What happens then, there are people calling in at the last minute, paying their money up on our website, www.themetacenter, themediciner2.com, and then